With the recent release of the Devil May Cry TV show, I was both excited and extremely cautious. The last time I saw an animated video game adaptation, it was Arcane and Edge Runners, which blew the doors off with its massive success. But how many times can an animated game adaptation actually work? Especially with some real stinkers over the years. And with this show having some, let's just say, mixed reviews, I thought it was a good idea to send my top generals to go and investigate this newly released TV show and break down whether this deserves your attention. Is Devil May Cry a faithful game adaptation? Is it worth watching? Let's jump into it.
Welcome everyone, I am Frank, joined with Haki, and we are breaking down Devil May Cry on Netflix, and we're going to start by diving into the good of the show. And before we continue, we are both gamers, and Haki has no experience with Devil May Cry. I have casual experience. I am by no means a lore expert here, but you're getting two different perspectives when we talk about Devil May Cry for Netflix. And starting off on what they did well, for me, I actually thought the animation and the action was pretty solid. You got the gore, you got the, again, like this heavy metal gothic vibe to it. You got some of the humor, right? So they did a really good job with the action, the animation, in my opinion, for the most part. And they really set up the vibes, I think, pretty damn well in the series. And pretty much from start to finish, you got some high points, you got some low points, but overall, the gore and the action, I think, held pretty strong for the majority of the show. Haki, what's one of the good things? And we'll bounce back and forth. And again, there'll be some spoilers, guys. We're going to try to hold off on all the giant events, but there will be some spoilers.
Yeah, I mean, so I had a lot here. I'll pick a few out of the hat here, but definitely gonna agree with you. The action, whenever Dante or the White Rabbit was involved, it was really awesome. And started right off the rip in the heist. It was really cool, really gory. And I like you said, I don't really have any experience with Devil May Cry, or I also haven't really had any experience with anime in the last 5 or 6 years. So I was definitely surprised. With that. And I also think some pretty good writing for at least the main characters. I think Lieutenant Lady, they dropped the ball a little bit, but we'll get to that, in the bad. I'll talk about that a little bit. And then, lastly, just really good art style. I thought, some of the demons that they had came up with were pretty cool, all unique. They had one looking like Venusaur coming out, which was pretty funny, but I thought great art style as well.
Yeah, and continuing on with that good, I wanted to ask you, Haki, what are your favorite characters? I think, again, what is really important when you're doing an adaptation of a video game, especially if which they do, a big thing is changing the story. The story is completely different from the games, but you have to be able to have a strong main character. And I think they do that with Dante. Dante, again, he's very laid back. They add some comedic relief with him, and then he has kind of those serious badass moments. And I think it works well enough for him because the story is vastly different. But when you do that kind of stuff, and we've seen experiences with other adaptations do that, we talk Halo, we talk again like Arcane, where you're grabbing characters from the world, but one of them is well received, one of them is not. And to me, it's because they kind of nail the characters. And then we'll talk about the story part. If you're changing the story, what it means there. But the big thing I think they get right here is the main character in Dante. I think they do him pretty well. The White Rabbit, I also think they do well. And some of the demon, specifically kind of one of those demon generals, I guess I'll call it, the flying one. To me, I thought he had an interesting dynamic to him. They kind of give some personality to the other demons. Some of them were stronger than others. The Shapeshifter was another one I thought was a strong character. But, to me, they nailed the main character. They nailed the main antagonist with their personalities. And Haki, do you have any other further ones? And kind of what do you think about character-wise for the main protagonist and antagonist?
Yeah, dude, I think they nailed the character development, at least for the White Rabbit. He had to be my favorite one. And you see him right away, too. Again, we're not going to get into crazy spoilers here, but right off the rip, you can tell that he is going to be a problem. And even just in later episodes, you got to see a kind of different way how they kind of portrayed his backstory, which I thought was pretty cool. Some people didn't like the episode that I'm talking about, but I thought it was pretty cool. They gave a little bit of a backstory. It was kind of a silent episode, but the White Rabbit was definitely my favorite.
Yeah, and it made a huge change. And I believe episode 6, where they kind of go into like a storybook. It was a very different art style, a very different way of telling the story, but it showed major background for 2 main characters in the show. So, that was kind of, I think the White Rabbit worked very well, and I think Dante worked very well. But with the good, we do have to talk about the bad. And I was not feeling the story. The part, it's hard for me because I do have experience with the story of the games. And this is so different. And again, I'm not completely against you changing and making your own story. But when you're writing the story, you want it to, number one, have some real tension to it. And I don't feel that it does. I think things are introduced so quickly. I think things progress so quickly. And I think a bunch of characters that they've implemented here had the potential to be cool, but they fell flat to me. The lady, Mary in this one, which is the lady from the game, she is so different. And again, she swears like crazy. I mean, every sentence she's dropping an F-bomb. Right. And it's just frustrating because not that she's like a badass character. I have no problem with that. But she's leading this Delta Force. The Delta Force sucks. The Delta Force is awful. They were hyped up to be this really good group that fights demons. It's just Mary. Everybody else is worthless. You know what I mean? And like that's the unfortunate part. And then when these kind of demon generals, also really cool, they're obviously not as bad as the Delta Force, which you will see if you watch the show what I'm talking about. But it's also just, Mary does quick work with these demon generals. And that's kind of the frustrating thing. They've also included some of the bosses from the game into the show, which is like a cool nugget, but they just don't have the same impact that you see from the game. You have the twins, some of the, the shapeshifter I mentioned was cool, the flying demon was cool, but outside of that, a lot of these other characters fall flat. They also introduce kind of the United States as a character, and they're a huge part of this story. They're not talked about from the game as much. And so this is kind of a new dynamic they put in, and it's just that generic bad guy, they're bad on both sides type of thing. And it just doesn't build a lot of tension. You see it right from the get-go is kind of what I'm getting at. You see it right from the get-go, and the majority of the characters outside of Dante and the White Rabbit fall kind of flat for me. What about you, Hockey?
Yeah, so I had 2 that I'm going to talk about. One's general, and the other one's kind of specific. So the general one was, this was it was way too short on 2 fronts, right? Per episode, it was 25 to 27 minutes long, right? Plus 3 minutes of credits. So, a 30-minute episode is really not 30 minutes. It's 26, 27 minutes. So I think it was too short per episode. And then there's only 8 episodes, right? So I just think in general, that probably led to some rushed dialogue. It led to some rushed action scenes. And we're going to get into a little bit of spoilers here. Like you said, bro, the Delta Force got absolutely trashed on, in one warehouse scene, one little scene, they all got trashed on. And it just didn't make sense. I mean, they tried to make it okay by saying we're used to level 2 demons and these seem to be level 4 demons. I think one of the Delta Force members said that, and it really just didn't make sense to me. And then specifically, you were talking about Lieutenant Lady. I have no backstory of Devil May Cry. You had mentioned that in the beginning, so I'm just going off of what the story was written, and I think they dropped the ball. In my perspective, I think they dropped the ball with Lieutenant Lady. He was way better than every other Delta Force member, right? And I mean, she had a little bit more tech, right? But I think they dropped the ball where, and here's some spoilers, we saw what happened to her dad, right? Her dad went crazy. Her dad started experimenting on herself, killed the mom, blah, blah, blah. And I think it would have been better character development or a better character arc if maybe the dad experimented on her and gave her some demonish powers, and that would explain why she was able to just run through the level 4 demons, So I think they dropped the ball there. Again, that is not lore at all, probably, but I think it would have made her make sense a little bit more.
Yeah, and I'll just, again, spoiler warning here, I just want to address just a point amount on the story and kind of the plot falling a little flat, right? So you also see the White Rabbit's background and how he became what he became. And again, I think he's a very cool character, but do you see how he became what he became? I thought was really stupid. It involved the Delta Force. And, you know, obviously the hatred for why Mary has for demons, you understand, like I mentioned about some of the experimenting and demon research. You'll see more in that out by watching. But do you see how the White Rabbit turns? Like, his background is cool, but when he goes through the portal and then they're being chased by a giant demon, a higher level demon, kind of these peasant demons trying to escape to a better land, Delta Force wipes them out. Right? Like the giant demons coming through the portal and they're shooting the peasants. Right? Like, it's just like, why? Like, that doesn't make sense. That makes no sense. And even with, again, spoiler warning, when the White Rabbit gets a certain vehicle here that can open the portals between hell and earth, he talks about trying to open up life for the peasants. But the only demons that show up when he opens the portal are high-level demonic demons. So it's kind of like his purpose when he got the chance to open it. And he makes a claim, you know, like, people will die, but we'll get an equilibrium. But he doesn't show bringing in any of the people that he wants to bring in. It's just the bad demons. So it's like, even his goal is shallow by the end. And that's kind of the frustrating part here, is like, there was potential here, but it just didn't culminate into the kind of, you know, big moments that we were looking for. And that's an unfortunate part. So, Chris, any other thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm just going to go off of what you had said about, like, the peasant demons. You know, it's definitely, I'm sure it's not lore accurate, but I definitely didn't understand how they were, like, good demons and bad demons, right? I thought just demons were demons. They were all bad, but they had, like, this kind of, like, this weird backstory of, like, oh, you know, there are good demons and they're just, you know, they're family oriented and they just want to get to a better world because their world had been, you know, poisoned. So that part didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. And then they also had, like, the, you know, United States just being demons themselves, you know. So it was a little weird.
Just being douchebags, you know, like the generic, you know, power hungry United States thing.
Big power hungry.
Yeah, and those are the kind of things, again, I don't mind that dynamic. You're trying to say, hey, there's bad guys on both sides, there's good guys on both sides, but it's just, there's no tension to it. You knew right away this was a problem, who the bad guys were, right? And it's not a bad thing when you see it with the White Rabbit one, when you see it on the other side too. It's just like, we know that these are two bad forces, and then there's, like, good guys who are, like, trying to maneuver between them. You know what I mean? So the tension just hasn't been really generated there. And we'll see going into season 2, could that pick up? But again, that's the good, that's the bad. What are your thoughts on Devil May Cry for Netflix? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, get that thumbs up and subscribe to help support the channel. And think about joining as a member. We have some really nice perks that are live. Come join the Marsman crew. And with that, Haki, let's give our final verdicts. And we're going to give a grade and then answer the question, is this a good video game adaptation? And I'll start off. This one was really tough for me. And we just did a video, the Minecraft video, make sure you guys check it out on the end screen, where we see a huge discrepancy. Now, for the Minecraft movie, the critics were not high on it, and the users were pretty high on it. And it's the reverse for Devil May Cry. The critics are very high on this show, and the users, the viewers, not so much. And I'm pretty torn. Because, like I said, I like the gore, I like the environment, I actually like Dante. There's some aspects there that you can build upon, but the story is not that enticing, and things that felt like could be huge moments, really big building blocks, fell flat by the time you reach the end of the show. And so for me, I'm giving this show a 7 out of 10. I think there's some high marks with the animations. I think there's some building blocks here, but they changed the story so much from the games that I think you really need to start hitting on these dramatic, these dramatic storytelling, creating this tension. And we're going to see now if they're involved in the US more. It looks like obviously held a huge part in season 2 if they go that way. And I'm not going to mention one of the spoilers at the end that showed a big part of it. Also, big change from the lore, or kind of moving way ahead into future games of Devil May Cry. But To me, I think it's pretty solid, but is it a good adaptation for Devil May Cry? This is where I say no. And I know I give it a 7 out of 10, which is above average score for us, and not a great adaptation because it is so different from the games. And I just don't think the story they replaced it with is super enticing as of season 1. They get Dante right, but everything else, they get, the White Rabbit right, but everything else just doesn't live up to what we hope to see from that adaptation. And so for me, I give it a 7 out of 10 on an entertainment scale, but I am not saying it is a great video game adaptation for Devil May Cry. What about you, Hockey?
Oh, dude, I'm gonna catch some flack for this then, bro. I got my flak jacket on. I got it. This is gonna sound crazy. I have it 8.8. Okay, that's high.
That is high. That is almost elite status.
Dude, and here's the reason why. I think I'm bugging a little bit because I haven't watched anime in a minute, right? It's been like 20 years, right? 15, 20 years. So I think that's where the real high numbers coming from. But dude, I really like this. I really like the action. Like I said, I like the writing, or I like, some of the writing. I like the characters, some of the character writing. The story was a little iffy, but dude, I was really hyped watching this. And here's the thing, right? I might have to bump it down to an 8.5, and I'll keep it at an 8.8 if this is what happened, right? I felt like at the end, I was only halfway through the season, right? At the end, someone comes in, and we won't spoil that part, right? But at the end, someone comes in, and right there, I was like, oh man, this is halfway through the season, and if it continued from here, it could get that's where my 8.8 can come in. So I'll knock it down to an 8.5 because I think I'm a little too hyped. But this show, I think, could have been so much better if it just had more time, dude. If the episodes were longer and there were more episodes. So I will bump it down a little bit to an 8.5. I have both 8.5 and 8.8 written on my sheet here. So, I'll
That's your final decision. And hey, you've never had experience with Devil May Cry. So is this a good to you? I think obviously your score said. Do you think it's a good video game adaptation?
I think it is because what I know of Devil May Cry is like crazy action and like a demon hunter fighting demons, and that's what I saw, bro. So I'm really hyped. And look, this got me super hyped to watch all the top tier animes: Edge Runners, Invincibles, Naruto. Like, I'm now gonna go into anime and really give it a shot because I just haven't watched anime, and this show made me hyped for anime.
Thank you guys so much for watching. What are your thoughts on Devil May Cry? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Also hit that thumbs up and subscribe to help support the channel. And watch our Minecraft review. Is it as good as everyone is saying? Are the critics right and it's not that good? Check it out at the end screen. This is Frank and Aki from Marsman Gaming signing off. Game on.